So, does anyone know what exactly is going on with VDARE? Everyone knows what VDARE is. It is apparently uh over. Although that's at least what I took from the message. Um oh no, they're taking donations. Um let's see. This is just straight. Oh, here it is. Yeah. It is finished. New York AG Letitia James crucifies VDARE. Um, Communist attorney Letitia James. So, has anyone been following this? Like, do you guys know what's going on? Does anyone care? Hello?
I haven't been following it myself,
Okay.
but
Um, I've known about VDARE for at least 20 years. I mean, I remember back in the early 2000s, this is early internet days, pre-social media days. I would read VDARE and the American Conservative and things like that. And, I felt like Chronicles magazine online. I even subscribed to Chronicles, the hard copy, for a while. I did. It was an interesting place for people who were critical of the war in Iraq, critical of some sort of pro corporate libertarianism. Like, could you actually find a place that inherited a lot of the Buchanan movement, the campaigns in the 2000s? And it was interesting. I remember when we watched that video maybe 2 months ago from the New York Times. They were discussing like the history of immigration, and the video said that Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush were having a sort of empathy competition for who could empathize with the immigrants more back in the 80s. And so it is an interesting position to take, to be an immigration restrictionist and to care about these things. And VDARE, I guess it did start in 1997, and that was a unique position to have a little webzine where you're talking about immigration restriction and so on. I began to find VDARE somewhat annoying, just in the sense of repetition. I just didn't find the right very intellectually stimulating, and just, to be frank, endlessly whining about immigrants. It's not I do disagree with that, actually, in certain ways. And I also think it's naive in certain ways, like using their own terms. That being said, it was, I found myself agreeing with it to a large degree, as well. And there were some interesting people. I mean, you could find Sam Francis articles, you could find, Jared Taylor, you could find Steve Saylor, the whole crew on VDARE. So, it's good. They were engaging in just kind of this like endless fundraising, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to put up a webzine, which just, I don't know. It's a little bit suspicious, or kind of strikes me as a misallocation of resources. I mean, do we really need yet another article from, like, a down to earth American who lost his job to an immigrant? Like, is this really that important? The other thing is that I think over the years, other conservatives have kind of taken this issue and really taken ownership of it. So you definitely could find like pro immigration sentiments in National Review. And at the very least, they kind of didn't want to go there. They didn't want to be too restrictionist because that was racist. And we can't have that. After all, William F. Buckley supported segregation for a time, and we're to the degree that National Review kind of defined the movement for many decades, we've got to move past that. But now I think the situation has completely changed. And the Republican Party is obsessed with the border. They are even engaging in kind of theories like the Great Replacement and so on that are rather edgier than I would say most of the VDARE content. And there's just been something kind of interesting that's happened in that way.
Could you please place the last sentence?
Richard, are you there?
Did any of you guys want to add in on this in terms of its? All right. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now.
All right. I think my Wi-Fi just popped out there for a moment.
Yeah.
Where was I?
VDARE. I guess I've been following not the collapse or the suing or whatever happened, but yeah, VDARE. I've always been aware of them, but yeah, they've always done a lot of Ameren adjacent stuff, but yeah, they're not really that relevant anymore. I mean, you have like Vivek Ramaswamy on the debate stage talking about the Great Replacement is not a conspiracy theory. Like, I feel like, yeah, they're kind of outmoded at this point. Like, who's gonna
do you
go to this
think?
event?
Yeah, do you think that no one would be talking about immigration if it weren't for VDARE? Do you think VDARE, like, I think VDARE
No,
probably,
I don't think VDARE did at all.
Yeah, I know that's the kind
really.
I know that's the thing. And I think it definitely inspired Ann Coulter. I'm sure she read VDARE due to the fact that she read Steve Saylor and Ameren or something. And the degree to which those Jared Taylor or Steve Saylor are kind of playing to her. She's almost like their audience. Whatever.
Yeah, I think conservatives. Yeah, people. Adios, America.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people
kind of like
adjacent there,
quasi-racist. Yeah, like crypto or quasi-racist. Also just kind of avoiding the real issue. I mean, like, as I've said at an Ameren conference, I guess 12 years ago, like, even if you shut down all immigration, the demographic issue is going to happen anyway.
Right.
It's just a reality. It's just a brutal reality. But like, if you're not ultimately accomplishing anything by what you're striving for, you might as well take up gardening. And the other aspect of this is that, like, the cultural, first off, Mexicans are not blacks. And if you shut down immigration, it's not like the blacks are going to vanish into thin air. Like, it's almost like they're playing this like shell game or kind of bait and switch or something, or like the gays are not going to go away if you stop immigration. If anything, Hispanics, and I'm not even saying this rhetorically, like, if anything, I clearly, man, evidently Hispanics are a retarding force against the advances of liberalism.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no question about it, actually. They're increasingly voting Republican, first off. So the whole Saylor strategy or whatever doesn't work. And I would not be surprised at all if it were 50-50 Hispanic voting and maybe even 60-40 Republican Hispanics.
Yeah, they get a bigger percentage of the Republican vote each and every election. It's clear that they're not like, Texas is going to turn blue. They've been saying Texas is going to turn blue for the past like 10 years now or something like that. It just, is it going to happen? I'm not even sure it's really going to happen.
I'm not sure it's going to ever happen. And the other thing about it is that it's like the Browns have turned red, or the Browns have gone to QAnon. QAnon was blowing up on WhatsApp in Florida.
Yeah.
So these Hispanics love this shit that like dumb whites like. Sorry to be so mean.
No, keep it up. More meanness, the better.
As Saylor pointed out, that's who's typically lining up around the block for the latest like Hollywood schlockfest blockbuster. Lots of Latinos, you know. So in politics, you see the same phenomenon.
Yes, intermarriage rates are also very high, and they seem to indicate that there's a common culture. In fact, this just goes against the notion that like we're going to do the Southern strategy, but for Mexicans, or like, you know, first off, Hispanic white intermarriage is the most common. And the other thing, it doesn't, excuse me, drinking one of these bubbly sparkling water drinks, and it's making me burp. So please bear with me. But anyway, this notion that like they're taking over the culture or whatever. No, they're actually they're intermarrying it in very kind of regular rates. Like with Asians, for instance, it's like 80% of interracial marriages are a white man and a Asian woman. But with Hispanics, it's actually regular. And what I would suggest is that there's no little like fetish going on, or there's no whatever. They're just it's just happening regularly or normally. And they are increasingly Republican, etc. And people kind of like the idea of immigrant crime and taking over a community or whatever, but that's a bit distracting for the reality, which is that there really is a sort of common culture. Anyway, the other thing why I guess I have a trouble taking VDARE seriously is that they'll play these self-serving games like, you know, like we're the only ones talking about this issue or something, when they're just clearly not. And maybe you could make the argument, being generous, but not too generous, being realistic. Maybe you could make the argument that they were the only ones talking about it in 1999. That's fair. Maybe you could also make the argument that it wouldn't have been as popular if VDARE hadn't existed. I'm not sure I fully buy that, but in a mood of total generosity, maybe I'd give them that one. But the notion that it's like the one doing some unique thing, it's just riding sidecar to Republican populism, and alternatively claiming that like they're the only ones saying this thing, which is immigration equal bad, or that they're somehow like deeply influential in winning. I mean, there was a kind of notorious fundraising email of when immigration got shut down during COVID, and the email said, "We've won." And wow. I remember seeing this. It's like, who's we? I'm just curious. Secondly, like COVID won, like clearly, because this is like a temporary measure. It's important, maybe even has good effects, unintentional, but like it is what it is. You didn't do this. COVID did it. Secondly, and most ironically, you were engaging in COVID denial for months up until like the COVID shut down immigration. So it's like you tried to kill the thing that was going to actually accomplish your goal. Anyway, just a mild irony.
Profoundly ironic. But I mean, I guess the solution would be to maintain COVID forever, and then obviously everything would be secure.
You should be hyping up.
Everything
COVID.
would be safe. Yeah, and don't mind the birth rates, but just keep COVID forever.
The China virus is back. It is killing our kids.
Maybe this is
the dog caught the China virus.
Maybe this is the final version of the Arctic Alliance that John Derbyshire talked about, right? So we got the quote that the China virus enabled VDARE to win. There you go.
Yeah, the China virus was brought over.
That's actually a funny joke. He did suggest that, right, we should all marry the Asian chicks and like put down the Browns or whatever. Yeah. But it is kind of funny. Like there was an ironic version of the Arctic virus of the Arctic Alliance where the China virus stopped the immigrants at last. That's actually pretty funny. So VDARE got a ton of money in like 2018 or something. And this is the filing, the People versus VDARE. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. The People of the State of New York by Letitia James, Supreme Court. So let me just read a little bit of this. Alleged facts. Respondent is a New York charitable not-for-profit corporation that incorporated in New York in 1999. In 2000, Respondent, then known as the Lexington Research Institute, applied for and received recognition of its tax-exempt status, 501c3, blah, blah, blah. It is an application of, listed two of its four, addresses in New York City. Respondent described its primary purpose as creating a publication, a webpage, a magazine with editorial content focusing on foreign domestic policy issues. In 2009, Respondent reported a six-fold increase in revenue from $700,000 in 2018 to approximately $4.3 million in 2019, and including a $1.5 million lump donation from a donor-advised fund. In early 2020, Respondent spent $1.4 million of these newly received funds on the purchase of the Berkeley Springs Castle, a medieval-style castle located in West Virginia. Okay, first off, I mean, I don't want to, like, what are they doing with $700,000, not to mention $4.3 million? I mean, it doesn't cost that much to run a website.
Right. And, another thing is if they're running out of money, if I were Peter Brimelow, I'd probably look at the tax statements and I'd say, $60 for coffee, $50 for running this website server. And oh yeah, all this money we spent on this castle. Maybe what's the first thing we should do to fix the money problem? Maybe sell the castle.
But that's the last thing they'll do. Yeah,
exactly.
Although 1.5 million. Now, was that did they pay for the castle in total, or did they put that down as a down payment? Because, real estate's crazy. I don't know what it's like in Berkeley, West Virginia, but there are a lot of like condominiums that are selling for 1.5 million. I don't know the answer. Public postings by Respondent Chairman Peter Brimelow and others indicate that he and his family have used the castle as their primary residence since at least March 2020. Well, I understand the temptation, although, yeah, you're basically just buying yourself a McCastle in suburban West Virginia. Yeah. Right. I don't know. Maybe it could be used as like a medieval times business where you could have like jousting or whatever. I mean, you could make a lot of medieval times
rent it out for reenactments. Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
During the same period, Respondent also substantially increased payments to Brimelow and to third-party for-profit companies he controls. In 2019, Brimelow's reported salary, a typo here, was more than doubled. Oh, it wasn't a typo. More than doubled, and comprised roughly 1/3 of Respondent's operating expenditures. Okay, so is Peter paying himself like $250,000 a year to run a web page?
Sounds like it.
I mean, that is really grotesque.
Yeah.
And like, he's less relevant than like Jared Taylor, I would say. Like he's about as like he must be good at fundraising or whatever, but it's like, what are you doing? Why? I also kind of have a sense that Lydia is behind this, his wife, and that will come on as we go down. So he doubled his salary. Respondent separately reported spending tens of thousands of dollars on office expenses in 2019, as well as paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to a third-party LLC controlled by Brimelow that was based at Brimelow's residential home address.
It sounds like he's just using VDARE as
I'm
a
sorry.
personal bank account at this point. It's just a piggy bank at this point. If he was doing anything with it before.
Exactly. Like, so, you see stuff like this about being crucified, and like Letitia James hates you and she's a communist and whatever. And then you read this, like, okay, this is the plaintiff's like opening statement. I mean, they're not, look, they can't just, this is also factual stuff. Like, this is not like rhetorical flourishes. They can back this up. And like, seriously, I mean, I understand you have to live, and I'm not against paying people, but like, you're creating a for-profit LLC that you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to for what reason? Like, it would be like you raise all this money and then you hire yourself to like organize the conference. Like, you pay yourself a $200,000 fee. I just, give me a break. I'm sorry. This sounds utterly fraudulent. There's just no other way of putting it. Respondent conveyed, in December 2020, respondent conveyed the entirety of the Berkeley Springs Castle property to two West Virginia corporations incorporated by Lydia Brimelow, Peter's wife and a respondent director. 5 months. So she now owns the castle. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what to say. It's like all of this stuff is so kind of irrelevant in that I like don't care, and I understand that there's like kind of grift everywhere, and you can call me a grifter. You could say that all of this is useless. You could go on and on, but like, this is pretty outrageous. And the notion that they're like constantly talking about how like they're the only ones standing for the what is it, the real American nation, and what, like, this is just this. Do you know what this reminds me of? Actually, this reminds me of evangelical preachers.
Oh yeah, like Ken Copeland and his private
exactly
jet.
Buying themselves private jets and all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the same kind of pitch. It's like, let's just save the people. The working class is being harmed by this, and the communists want to take us down.
Yeah. And I need my private jet. I need my castle in order to speak the truth to the masses. It just, I cannot do it without this castle. It's the corruption. It's just it's astounding. It's really astounding.
It really is. And I don't want to, I know everyone, you could always say like, oh, you're just jealous, or you whatever. That's fair enough. But it's like, these are just the facts. Like, I'm not, and then the way it's just described, like they're doing this because they oppose free speech or whatever. And they're paying lawyers. So again, it's like, I think I know the lawyers who are doing this. Lawyers are getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to like fight these. And we have fought Letitia James at the cost of $1 million for nearly 3. I mean, what? This is such a fucking waste.
Well, I guess the social Darwinist view would be to say a fool and his money are lucky enough to get together in the first place. So, I mean, good on him for paying for his castle, but yeah, he's clearly it's clearly not going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. And then just not, like, the way it's described, it's as if it's this like attack on them. Like, think of all these other organizations that are more impactful for good or for ill. Like, why doesn't Gavin Newsom go after the Claremont Institute? I mean, they were directly involved in the attempt to overthrow the government. Like, why don't you go, why don't the communists go after those institutions? The reason is that I imagine they're not run as like a personal charity. And then just comparing yourself to Christ, I mean, this is like, I don't know. I can't even.
Well, speaking of
the
comparing people to Christ,
yeah.
well, unless you
Well,
had
I
more
want
on
to
this.
keep going on this for a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah. So this, I remember when they got money, they got all of this money, and then they were basically using it on lawyers. So all these lawyers got paid. So in 2020, Peter Brimelow sued the New York Times for a 2019 article that accused him of being a white nationalist. So just think about this for a little bit. So you're suing the New York Times for libel. You're claiming that they called you a white nationalist, and that is just utterly damaging to your reputation, and thus you deserve damages, to the tune of millions. Okay, first off, like, white nationalist is a fairly reasonable or neutral term. I mean, I know it's salacious, but it's almost as kind of like reasonable as you could get. It's certainly more reasonable or neutral than white supremacist or evil racist or something. It's basically saying you're a racial nationalist and you're a white nationalist. Secondly, Peter Brimelow has spoken at AmRen events. He's like spoken at alt-right events. He clearly, I mean, he does stuff. I won't go into this, but if you just look at like his article on the Buffalo tragedy, did the Great Replacement cause the Buffalo shooter? And then he shows a graph of like the white percentage in Buffalo going down, and thus the shooter is sort of kind of justified. I mean, it's just terrible. It's the worst way of talking about these issues. And like, yeah, it's not that surprising that people are going to accuse you of being a white nationalist. And if you're a public figure, they can call you a white nationalist. Not the New York Times, but I'm sure tons of places like the Daily Beast have called Tucker Carlson or Vivek Ramaswamy a white nationalist. So when you're a public figure, it's kind of fair game. Like, you've got to really prove something to win a libel or slander suit. Like, the New York Times would have had to accuse him of being like a child molester or involved in the assassination of John F. Kennedy or something. Like, you would have to go really far to justify that against a public figure. But thirdly, like, do you see the demoralizing way in which getting like uppity about this is very bad for their own movement? Like, there's nothing worse than being called a white nationalist. Well, most all of your writers are white nationalists. A ton of your readers are white nationalists. A ton of your readers are just racist, if we're just being blunt about it. And you're like afraid of your own shadow. You're like demoralizing the very notion of racial nationalism by suing the New York Times for libel. You don't sue someone for libel who call you handsome and intelligent like that. You don't, you're like, no, I'm not. This is an outrage. It's simply incorrect. No, you don't sue for libel over that. You sue for libel over this, horrible, vicious smear. First off, Peter is a white nationalist. It's just obvious. Secondly, why does that offend you? Why are you suing someone over something like that? You're surrendering the past before the battle is even fought. You're giving in to that notion. You're demoralizing the very concept of racial nationalism going forward. And again, you have all this money, you're paying lawyers hundreds of thousands of dollars to do lawsuits that are obviously hopeless and that do lose, and then you get slapped with an anti-slap lawsuit. That is what is it? Civil no, it's litigation against public participation, basically. It's what slap I forgot what the S stands for. I just don't know what to fucking say. I'll stop being this bitchy, for lack of a better word, about this issue, but like, it's just, what a waste. And just lawyers get paid a ton of money. Lydia Brimelow, who's just this like marries Peter, and Peter's old. I mean, he's pushing 80. So she's going to have a castle in West Virginia. Like, good for you. And I hope it's fun, whatever. But like, Lydia is irrelevant. Like it's just like, why are we doing why is the movement doing this? Why does it always do this kind of shit? I mean, just paying this much money to lawyers to do hopeless lawsuits that blow up in your face. I don't know what to say. Does anyone want to disagree with me or defend VT?
I think we're in consensus.
Yeah.
It is a shame, but yeah. This is kind of a trend.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there just has to do you know what really what almost bothers me the most is like writing sidecar to conservatives and like taking credit for other people, like claiming we've won, or like we're the voice of real America or whatever, when you're just obviously not. And just kind of fundraising, it really does, it really reminds me quite a bit of mega church pastors. Anyway, so I don't even know if it's over. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe they'll keep going. Maybe this is it, and there's just only the castle remains. I didn't even know you could like purchase something with a 501c3 and then gift it to a private corporation controlled by an individual who just so happens to be the wife of the person who runs the 501c. I mean, that's just like kind of obvious. Like if that's legal, it might very well be legal. I don't know, but it's gonna like raise eyebrows. And yeah, believe it or not, like the state is gonna go after you and be like, what are you doing with this?
Richard,
Yeah.
I have a question.
Sure.
Could you imagine the situation to evolve like this? I mean, when you think about 2016, 2017, could you think we will get this situation?
With VDARE in particular?
No, I mean in general, like the movement, not only failing but evolving in this direction.
I didn't think it would evolve in this direction. I mean, I thought that the alt-right would be able to gain a certain legitimacy, and that it had broken through and it had come out of the shadows, and that we would actually have a movement where we can like pay a number of people salaries who could do important work. And I really did think that that was going to be the result of like that amount of exposure. I'm sure that Peter probably almost like played a game where he was like, oh yeah, Richard Spencer, he's like he's just too toxic. He's he's the boogeyman and so on. So we need to do this like more pragmatic solution of VDARE, but all that ends up in is like you know raising $750,000 to run a webzine. I mean, what? They're kids who get more views, who like sit at their home with a blue Yeti mic and do podcasting and stuff. Like it's just bizarre. I thought we could kind of get to a new place, but instead we're here.
I think the movement lacked the complete package. You can have a propagandist, and that's fine, and people writing articles, but it has to be a team, like a team. And so you need some people who infiltrate in the institution, some people who lobby. You have to appeal to the elites. You have to appeal to IQ, promising people, not just dwelling basement, angry kids. You have to have a little bit of everything. And the left had this, the right didn't. So that's why we are in this situation.
Yeah, you do have to have all, and you also need to support people who are making an impact. And like even the right, if you think about the Heritage Foundation as not talking about the left, I mean they fund intellectuals, they fund people doing serious work. They don't just fund like Breitbart or something. And yeah, you need different people. You need people going into government. You need people doing intellectual work. You need people doing fun, more accessible work, etc. And I don't. I just don't know what to say. It's just.
I also noticed that the right has had it put too much emphasis on avoiding institution building, avoiding university. For example, I'm in an Italian forum, and there's a guy who was studying medicine, and he completely went crazy in the sense that he kept repeating 4chan memes and everything. I mean, it's all right, it's funny, but he doesn't have a fault of his own. Like he repeats like a parrot these memes, and he left medicine, and he started a manual job. He's not doing that bad economically, but he's in this loop where he denigrates intellectual activities and studying. He says the university is gay, the university is leftist, and so on. Even in Italy, these American memes are getting are coming here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stupid. It's nothing bad to do a manual job. You can become a businessman later, and you can have a family. But some people could be more influential in institution. It can be medicine, it can be engineering, it can be law. Of course, law, economics, and politics are more closer to power, like fields. But
yeah,
if you disengage from intellectual activity, you become a prole. You become the subject, not an object of politics of life. I don't know. I mean, this is so stupid.
Yeah, I just totally agree with you. And I mean, again, it's my opinion, but I obviously think I'm right about this, which is that the right, when it is fundamentally anti-intellectual, even if it is engaging in sort of intellectual activities like writing articles or something, or even publishing books to a degree, like when its entire vibe is anti-intellectual, it's about whining about the left. Look at what they've done to us. Look at all these terrible intellectuals. They're all gay and evil and so on. When you start down that path, you're going to end up where the right is. because there's no, yeah, you're just,
continue.
you're writing books against books in a way. You're like, you're scolding other intellectuals, like that. Maybe there's a place for that to some degree, but if you're not offering any sort of way of thinking, then what are you doing? It's like, if your whole goal is to protect like the real American nation, which is like whites, I guess, rural whites or suburban whites or some combination. These aren't people who are actually moving and shaking in any way. These are people who just want to be left alone, and they just want to grill, and they want to shop, and they want to go to church or whatever. But like, that's fine. It's not that these people are bad. It's just this is not, you're these are people who will be led and governed and forced to do things against their will that they don't like. These are not the people who define a society. And
And there's another thing, that these people have this ideal of life, which is traditional, where it's basically the vision of life is not stimulating to the high IQ, creative, noble people. So they will lose because you need such people to win politically. And for example, this guy, he, he became also very fascinated with Islam and Chechens. And half it is tongue cheek. He laughs about it, memes about Chechens and so on, for example. But he believes in it. Okay, so I see you were really right when you said that the trend is multiracial misogyny and traditionalism and religious right. I've seen a lot of right wingers um, who praise Islam. Some half jokingly say we should convert to Islam. So their vision of society is like the life of a shepherd in the mountains of Afghanistan. Like you live like an animal, very poor, but you can beat your wife, and you have a wife, and you didn't even have to seduce her because you just asked her father to give her to you. I mean, this is something that is alien to European people. We don't like this kind of life. It's not. It doesn't ennoble us. It doesn't inspire us. It's just the ideology of the losers. So we are doomed to lose.
yes,
And it's not. And as a it's not a coincidence that the PMC, the professional managerial class, is switching to the center left than before, parallel to this. So it's I think this is a very, very bad development.
yeah, I agree. And all they want, their solution to the managerial class is to get rid of them. Like, if you look at the, what is it, Agenda 25 or whatever, there was something that the Heritage Foundation was doing of, what we're going to do when we take over. And it's basically like, we're just going to fire all these people. We're going to fire hundreds of thousands, and we're going to bring in thousands of, like MAGA guys to staff some of these bureaucracies, but we're going to get rid of, the Department of the Interior and the Department of Education. And so we're just going to fire them all. And so they're ultimately just abdicating any responsibility for defining and governing culture. I mean, maybe a lot of these bureaucrats need to be fired. I mean, that's fair enough. Like, is government bloated, or I get it. But, you're not really offering something in its stead. You're just kind of like, let's just get rid of these bureaucrats or whatever. Well, you still have like Hollywood, you still have culture makers, you still have academia, you still have all these things that, if you can't really define yourself, they're going to define you for you.
And it's ironic that there is a meme that says lift weights and connected to, for example, the right wing and so on. But as I started lifting weights and I started having a job, I became more critical than to the right wing movement, online movement.
Yeah.
They're so doomerish. Everything is doom porn for them. Nothing constructive.
Yeah. Just lift weights and read old books or whatever. It's a weird, like, peasant like existence of
I was saying that I started
not
lifting
having
weights.
even a critical
It didn't.
perspective on these
It did
old books.
the opposite effect on me.
Yeah.
This is funny.
Yeah. You lift weights and you're like, oh yeah, the right kind of sucks.
No, I mean, this is good. I'm nothing against that, but you can't center everything on that. And
No.
they disengage. They often are needs. I mean, the percentage of needs among the online right is probably higher than among the normies who are disengaged. I don't know.
Yeah.
When you start having a stake in the future, you start to be more programmatic, I think. More, you focused on the strategy more. I don't know. Maybe for some people is opposite. You become a normie and you disengage and completely stop thinking about it. Or maybe,
Yeah.
in my case, I started thinking about it, but in a more refined way. I mean, the memes, the simplistic memes are, I even hate them now.
I do too. No, I can see why you found this podcast, because we're trying to find a different way.